සතුට ගෙන එන ගම්මැද්ද රට නගන ජනපෞර.
Newsfirst, Newsline.
Sri Lanka is headed towards disasters. This is not the kind of disaster, of course, that is in the economic realm or the disaster that we are accustomed to speak of given the developments of recent times. But this is the work of Mother Nature mainly, and also certain disasters influenced by man. With the advent of the economic crisis here in Sri Lanka, Sri Lankans have, to a certain degree, forgotten about the disasters that affect Sri Lanka as far as nature goes, as far as man-made disasters go. But from time and time again, we are reminded about the devastation that those disasters can cause as well. Best example being the fire in the Kajimawata area that was reported recently that damaged about 70 houses and left people helpless. To discuss these matters and more in lieu of the International Day for Disaster Risk Reduction that will be celebrated tomorrow, we have with us today the Director General of the Disaster Management Centre, Major General Sudantha Ranasinghe. A very good evening, sir, and welcome to the show.
Good evening, thanks.
Sir, a little bit about the disasters that Sri Lanka has been facing. Of course, the economic crisis is enough in itself for Sri Lankans to handle. We've been on Gammadda these past few days, and we continue to report to the people about the situation of Sri Lankans living in these rural areas. And sadly, of course, it is these same people who are living in rural areas that face the brunt of the blow when disaster comes knocking on our door. Sir, the Disaster Management Centre has played a pivotal role in managing disasters. Of course, there is only so much that you can do to prevent a disaster. But when it comes to the International Day for Disaster Risk Management, it will be celebrated tomorrow. An event will be held that is organized by the Disaster Management Centre. What really is the goal of this event? How would it benefit the people of Sri Lanka? What is your message that would keep Sri Lankans safe given the possibility of an imminent disaster?
This year's theme of International Day for Disaster Risk Reduction globally is the early warning, early action, and leave no one behind. Once we say early warning and early action, that means proper forecasting, proper understanding of the possible vulnerability hazards and vulnerabilities, and then keeping everybody, the vulnerable communities, informed about those possibilities and leaving no one behind and reaching the last mile and making sure everybody is safe and secure. So it's not only people we are talking about making sure people are safe and reducing the disasters and impacts on the structural damages and properties as well. Now here this year the whole world is talking on the Target G of Sendai framework, where we are trying to inculcate the habit of people learning and getting the early warning in time and responding to the early warning. The biggest issue what we have is, though the early warnings are delivered, though we keep people informed about the situations, possibilities and hazards and vulnerabilities connected to hazards, people do not listen. The biggest example, last year November situation where we had approximately 29 deaths, whereas about 26 out of 29 would have been prevented had they listened to us. Now here, this year, we are trying to make sure it is not only delivering the message to people, but here we are trying something else. We are going one step ahead. We are talking about the communities leaving. When we say leaving no one behind, it includes women, children, poor, and most importantly, people with disabilities. Now, how best are you going to reach the people with disabilities? Where are the data of these people? How can you convey the SOS message to these people? Then what is the mechanism of rescuing these people, and how best are you going to take them away? So this is a new thing, and tomorrow you will find for the first time a member from people, there is an organization who represent the entire disabled community of Sri Lanka attending the conference, attending the symposium and joining the panel discussion, and they will say what they want and how badly they have been neglected previous years. So this is one serious addition what we are doing. In addition, this morning there was a Asia Pacific symposium on the same subject.
Right.
And one question I posted was, what are your mechanisms on making sure when you say leave no one behind, those people with disabilities, what are your mechanisms? They didn't have mechanism. Even the Asia Pacific is not having. So this is where Sri Lanka is taking the lead, and I'm sure we will be the first to develop such mechanisms. So we are developing our protocols and algorithms on this subject, and I'm sure with this conference tomorrow, seminar tomorrow, symposium tomorrow, we will be making sure when we say leave no one behind, the entire spectrum, all types of people in the community are engaged, connected, catered for, and planned for.
Major General Ranasinghe, it's important that we learn from our past experiences. One might say even Sri Lanka is in this situation on other fronts, be it political, be it economical, because we haven't learnt enough from our past mistakes. But not learning from our mistakes, especially in matters of facing a disaster or facing a calamity that could cost many Sri Lankans, hundreds of thousands of Sri Lankans, their lives. Best example being the Boxing Day tsunami in 2004. And before that, correct me if I'm wrong, Major General Sudantha Ranasinghe, but there wasn't an organized framework called the Disaster Management Center before this 2004 tsunami hit, was there?
No, before 2004 there was a relief support system under Ministry of Social Service. When tsunami hit the country, the whole world rather, realized the importance of such disasters, such calamities and the situation. So after that, in 2005, the Disaster Management Center was established, and it took some time to come off the ground. Then now, with the span of time, we have developed in such a way, it's not only the main headquarters, the national center we have 25 centers covering all 25 districts in Sri Lanka. And we are connected with all international agencies and international organizations who are sponsoring, heading and coordinating the subject of disaster management. So now we have become a global organization, so we are connected with them, and for this year, from 2023 to 2030, they say the most vulnerable is Asia and South Asia. So this is one important area we are trying to make sure that we do our annual predictions right, we do our seasonal predictions right, and finally we make sure that we do our impact-based predictions right, so that people know. And then it's not only doing the prediction, we are telling them what to do, how to do, when to do. The SOPs should be developed. At district level, we are trying to inculcate the habit of listening and adhering to instructions on the subject of disaster management. So this is one important subject we are trying to get everybody acclimatized into.
Major General Sudantha Ranasinghe, you were speaking about connectivity, coordinating and managing, and especially during times of a disaster, these key elements would be the deciding factor on the number of lives lost and how well you respond to these situations. So, going by the theme, leaving no one behind, it's important to keep people informed. Back in the day, especially even when a tsunami hit, we set up these systems where there is an alarm that goes off, there is a sound that is given, and this alerts the people. But we're living in modern age. The world has progressed so much during the past 2 decades. We have modern technology available. Has the Disaster Management Center looked at incorporating this modern technology into achieving your goal of saving lives during a disaster?
Our latest plan, and we are really working on this, we have signed MOUs with a number of organizations. We have main service providers in Sri Lanka. In Sri Lanka, if you get 99.9% carries a phone. So the service providers, all important service providers, we have 5 major service providers in Sri Lanka. Now we engaged with all the service providers and we have signed MOUs with I think almost 4 and 1 is waiting. Once we sign with these service providers, each and every service provider will have a focal point with Disaster Management Center. And our Disaster Management Center, our operations room, that is the Emergency Operation Center of the Disaster Management Center, will have a separate dashboard connecting with all these service providers. So once we get this impact-based early warning or the impact-based message, then what we will do is we'll convey this message to this service provider.
Right.
And they have their customers, and whether they are engaged, whether they are registered, or whether our phones are on sleeping mode, what they told us was that they can deliver that SOS message. It's not the national or the country based, it will be on the AGA division, with the tower based.
Right.
So under that tower, we'll say the tower is at Kalutara. Kalutara, we say Kalutara 1 village, if you take. If the tower is there, only that those people in that village will get their message.
So if myself, not being a resident of Kalutara, if I was there at that time, would I get the message as well?
Yes, because your phone is engaged with that tower.
Right, right.
So you will get that message. And we are working with few more programs, and even this morning we have been working with another new project called CREST-MPA, the Climate Resilient Multi-Phase Program. Once this program gets activated, our meteorological department will be upgraded in such a way where we are trying to make sure that we can give predictions at least to an area by 5 kilometer by 5 kilometer.
5 kilometer radius?
5 kilometer radius, we say. It's a 5 kilometer by 5 kilometer, where we give 100% accurate information on that. So it will take maybe 1 year, 1.5 years for things to come in and establish and all that. But until that happens, we have our other forms of predictions and our other forms of message delivery. So the Med department has their own early warning system. They are getting their information. Then we have our international frameworks giving us their predictions. Then we have this mathematical ways of counting those predictions. Once we get those predictions, we keep the people informed. And most importantly, we have 4 seasons, as I told you. We have the intermonsoon, then we have the southwestern monsoon, intermonsoon, and northeastern monsoon. Now, during our practice for last so many years, we know exactly what monsoon, what period, where, how, what, and in what strength. These data are available, but we are trying to develop more data and more databases, and we are trying to develop a national center for data. So once we get these data, what we are trying to do is, it's information what we get. We get information on climate and weather data from my department, from National Building Research Organization, from Irrigation Department. So once we get all this data, then we have to put all this data and information into a system where we analyze and make sure this data is converted into intelligence. Once it's converted into intelligence, that factful, real intelligence will be delivered not only to people, but to those sectors who are responsible for making national plans. So that is very important when it comes to those
disaster risk
deliveries.
reduction. Major General Sudantha Ranasinghe, you spoke about the communicating information to the general public on disasters. You said that is being done to a certain degree, at least at international standards, that you are trying to maintain international standards. But you said there is a reluctance among the general public to act according to the advice given by the Disaster Management Center. During our tours on Gammadda, we spoke with the people who are hit by these disasters quite constantly, and they presented to us certain issues that they face that impedes them from heeding your warnings and acting according to your advice. We'll continue this discussion on those matters after this short commercial break. Don't go anywhere. You're watching Newsline live.
Newsfirst, Newsline.
Shooting Ungalla. 32 people gunned down since May 2022. Income tax amended. Monthly income of over 100,000 rupees subject to tax. Senior police officers summoned to the Human Rights Commission over Sunday's protest. Eric Solheim appointed President's International Climate Advisor. Wanidhu Hasaranga confident of T20 World Cup triumph.
Plan nega simple, Asia Cup edino age World Cup edina.
A trusted place for your fixed deposit. Valuable FD. 25% for 2 months. 25.5% for 4 months. Valuable FD. The symbol of stability. Newsfirst, Newsline.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsline live. Before we crossed over to the break, I informed you that we will be discussing about certain issues faced when it comes to people adhering to the advice and instructions given by the Disaster Management Center. However, in the interim, we received a few messages from the public on questions to be posed to Major General Sudantha Ranasinghe, and this is one. So it goes, will politicians and those in governance also listen to warnings about pending disasters when they have failed to listen to warnings of professionals when it comes to banning fertilizer and agrochemicals, and also the warnings given to them about a possible debt default? So in short, Major General Sudantha Ranasinghe, I believe the question is, despite your advanced technologies available at the DMC to predict and to warn and to convey information, do you think that politicians in Sri Lanka are listening or will listen to these predictions, to these warnings, and formulate their policies accordingly?
The simple answer is they should listen. See, I was talking about the sectorized or the responsibility of different sectors. We talk of food security. The responsibility of the food security is based on the Ministry of Agriculture. So the Agriculture Department and the in 25 districts of Sri Lanka has different crops and different priorities or different practices of the agriculture. Then power and energy sector. Now they also have their own responsibility of hydropower, then controlling waters, delivering power, then buying power, then the releasing the energies and all those things. So this power sector, so power and energy sector. So we talk of food security, security of power and energy, then the security of education, the progress of education, then health sector. Most of these are, all of these are connected with the predictions and the warnings given by the climate change, whether I said at the beginning the annual prediction, then the seasonal prediction and the impact-based prediction.
Right.
Once these predictions are given, it's up to those responsible people who should make sure that they make their decisions and annual plans based on the predictions and early warning. Otherwise, we will fail. So, early warnings, early action, leaving no one behind means listen, understand, study. It's not only information, convert it to intelligence, convert into your national plans, and make sure the national plans are activated to make sure nobody is left behind.
Major General Sudantha Ranasinghe, speaking about predictions and analyzing data available, the role that we can do, or what we can do in analyzing data as far as predicting the weather, let's say, is quite uncertain, because the weather can change at any time. But speaking about some incidents that took place in Sri Lanka, or disasters that took place in Sri Lanka, like the Kajimawatha fire, those can be predicted by simply analyzing how people live there. I mean, it's a known fact that many of the people who live there are living in shanties and under dire conditions. And many of those areas, like we discussed before, would have illegal power lines, so on and so forth. So does the Disaster Management Center look into these aspects as well when they analyze their data, or is it just data that is on the weather?
No, now, once you get disasters, we have natural disasters, man-made disasters, and man-influenced disasters. Now, Kajimawatha is a typical case of man-influenced disaster. But when you get the garbage dump that's in Mitharamulla, we are yet to understand whether it's man-made or man-influenced. Now, in this scenario, the weak point what we have is the legal mandates. Now, Kajimawatha, we know those are illegal squatters. People take an illegal electricity connections. But once they come in there and establish themselves there and get the water connections, the electrical connections, some get illegal, and some people, by virtue of living there, they have a right to get their names into voters list also. Now, how best are we going to remove them, and where are we going to put them in? Now, here we have done a study. We have given our projections and papers to the Prime Minister. Last week we did that. We had to find all-inclusive solutions for these things. And you find sometimes these people were illegally staying even after getting a house from the government, a flat from the government.
Right.
The family gets one. So if it's a family of three, the two goes into the flat and one continues in this cutting the shanty. Now, we need strong legal framework, the legal mandates for this. Without strong legal mandate, we cannot control and take action on these situations.
So another question from one of our viewers. Recently, I believe a few days ago, Erik Solheim was appointed as the President's advisor on climate change. I know it's quite a recent appointment, but as the Director General of the Disaster Management Center, are you aware of what sort of a role will he be playing here in Sri Lanka? Will he be corresponding, coordinating with the Disaster Management Center?
I'm unaware on what organization, whether it's a country organization or a global organization.
No, Erik Solheim was personally appointed as the Prime Minister, beg your pardon, as the President's advisor on climate change.
In Sri Lanka.
In Sri Lanka.
Okay. So, doesn't matter. Individual doesn't matter. We have our policies, we have our practices, and we have our algorithms. So, technical and scientific inputs given to us for the benefit of the people, for the benefit of the development, or for the benefit of scientific and technical enhancement of the subject of disaster management, the climate, weather. May it be any person, but if it is fitting our systems, our requirements, and our programs, well, we have no issues. Individuals doesn't matter. It's the work what we talk about.
So, Major General Sudantha Ranasinghe, if I just pose an ad-lib question to you, do we really need a lot of international support in this endeavor?
Yes, disasters means a global subject. It does not start, or Sri Lanka do not initiate disaster. Here we are a small country where we are a guinea pig of those
bigger countries.
Big countries, industrial and countries who make so much of damage to the ozone layer. So we are in a small way becoming real guinea pigs of the action of those actors. So they have a responsibility, and there is a regulation in the world that it's mandatory that they help, they finance smaller countries when we ask for our rights, because we suffer because of their action. So it's a global agreement, and it's mandatory, and they do it, and they always work with us. And internationally, for the subject of disaster management, they contribute, and they put so much of money into this subject, because whole world understands if you don't work, if you don't act now, it will be too late.
Too late. It will be past the 11th hour. Major General Sudantha Ranasinghe, one final question. Currently, as where we stand in Sri Lanka, we are defaulting on our debt. We are technically bankrupt. The government, we always see information on news items that the government doesn't have enough funds to finance its projects. Of course, the Disaster Management Center can't be an area where the government cuts down on, because this is something that deals with the lives of the people. But we know that since we are living in a community in Sri Lanka, it doesn't really matter where the money comes from, whether it's the government or the people. What matters is that relief is sent to the people who need it most. And Sri Lankans are known to be generous people. Sri Lankans are known to be understanding people, empathetic people. And whenever there is a disaster, Sri Lankans always step up. And we personally as an organization know this because of the Sahana Yatra programs that we've organized and the resounding response that Sri Lankans have got. As far as the Disaster Management Center goes, are there plans of working out a procedure on how people can come and interact with the government, give aid to the government to be delivered to people who need it most?
There are a number of organizations who are coming forward. Last week, we had a team coming from Singapore. We gave a number of deliveries and supplies and supports for people in Colombo, all the Peruvians in Sri Lanka, some of the Peruvians in Sri Lanka, and then they went even to Vauni, and it was a massive program. Then number of donors are calling and giving supports and delivering things and materials and essential needs.
So at a time of disaster, if there is a person out there who wants to contribute, what's the procedure?
They simply have to write to the Presidential Secretariat, and they deliver directly to the Secretary of Defense.
So this is in advance? No, I'm saying, say there is a massive flood that starts tomorrow, hopefully not. But if there is a person who sees the calamity and wants to donate, is there a hotline?
Yeah, 117, they can call 117. Right. 117 is a hotline which was the only national call center we had when Corona came in Sri Lanka. So 117 is very famous, and people know 117. You call 117, or you can join us on the DMC at gov.lk, the DMC website. So you can join us. Best is 117 because it's a 24/7 line. We are operators, trilingual. We are taking all the messages, and even 117 you can connect even on the computers. It's a web. There's a web link also.
Right.
So you can give whatever the proposals, offers, and whatever, even their professional inputs.
Right.
We always take all that, and everybody is welcome. And the bottom line is we must make sure together. It's not only government sector, the private sector, mercantile sector, chambers, everybody must get together. Even we are working on a new concept on developing mercantile emergency operations center, the chambers emergency operations centers, where everybody gets connected, everybody gets together. Unless we work together, we will not achieve this goal of leaving no one behind and everybody is safe.
Thank you very much, Major General Sudantha Ranasinghe. Of course, the theme for tomorrow, the International Day on Disaster Risk Reduction, is not only pertinent as far as disaster risk reduction goes, but it is pertinent to the current predicament that we find ourselves in here in Sri Lanka. Leave no one behind. And of course, as our discussion progressed, I'm pretty sure that our viewers out there also would have felt just a little bit safer because of the establishment of the Disaster Management Center and the yeoman service that everybody at the DMC are providing to keep both you and I safe. Until we meet again, take care and God bless. See you again soon on Newsline Live.
News First, main sponsor.
25% for 2 months. 25.5% for 4 months. Valuable FD.
LB Lasa Isuru and unparalleled reward for a trusted deposit.
Your hygiene partner.
Introducing new Safeguard 100 grams, rupees 175 only.